Thank you, Captain,
Yeah.
for asking me to read your fucking mind.
Captain's Pod, Stardate 612922.1. Welcome aboard the Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shore leave from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I am your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me, as always, she's the reason the holodecks have safety protocols. It's Ambassador Deneé.
And don't forget a cleaning regimen.
Oh, especially. So wait, did you put that in place, or do we clean them because of you?
Because, and also because I put them in place. Listen, I made a mess, or two or three or four. I thought to myself on the 2 or 3 or 4th one that maybe something should be done about this. So I outed myself as the culprit. I then offered to be part of the solution. It was a whole thing. It's actually all in the manual. I can't believe you don't know. It's like an extracurricular class in Starfleet where you learn about the history of the holodeck.
No one reads those manuals. If they did, we wouldn't have any of the holodeck episodes that we currently have. Like, hey, don't go in there minutes before you're about to embark on a very dangerous diplomatic mission with a very hostile species. Don't go in there if you're not certain you can get back out. Also, those holodeck doors shouldn't be able to lock. They just shouldn't. There should always be an escape hatch. There's none of these things. There are so many ways to escape holodeck episodes that just don't happen.
Which led to a lot of messes, so not all of them my fault. That's also outlined in the documentation.
Specifically not Deneé's fault. So even people who don't know who Deneé is. Yeah.
That's right.
So I have a question. You said 2, 3, or 4 times, but did you mean 2, 3, or 4 different occasions? Or holodecks 2, 3, and 4? Like, have you written off entire holodecks?
Okay, when one breaks, you go to the next one, right?
No, that's not how that works. No. You fix it, or else you just end up. It's like I've messed up this room. I'm not going to use it anymore. We'll just do everything in the bathroom. It was
a period of growth for me. Okay, I had some learning to do.
Ew, that's gross.
You're such a child.
Hey, it's a period. Oh dear, you might think that we're doing a holodeck episode today, but we are not, although the holodeck does make an appearance. We are continuing our theme of sorts with Descent Part 1. Do you know anything about this episode? Have you been spoiled on it at all? Are you going in completely blind?
No, all I know is on Twitter I saw that someone said they questioned your logic a little bit and said maybe I should watch something else before getting into Descent. I chose not to participate in the conversation for a couple of reasons, but chief amongst them being I don't know the difference. So
I was very, very, very tempted to do that, and I decided
to do what?
There is one episode that would help for context. However, it doesn't really stick with the theme that I'm going for. So, and if we start doing that, even that episode, there's some episodes before that we should show you as well. Like TNG,
it doesn't end.
Yeah, by the time we get to season 6 and 7 of TNG, there was a lot of wrapping up of loose ends and calling back to things that had been set up in previous series. So there can be a lot of that. But we will discuss specifically what that episode was or is. It'll become pretty clear throughout the episode, but you can appreciate this without knowing that stuff.
Okay.
I love how enigmatic that was.
Well, it was very because you weren't mentioning whatever episode was being requested.
I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Even if I mention that episode, it will spoil something about this episode.
Really?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I like how much faith you have in my knowledge.
Oh no, it will just by one thing. So did you read Jonathan's? So we have like a group work.
No, I didn't.
You didn't read Jonathan's message in the Captain's Pod chat.
No, because once you guys start going, I'm like I don't know what's happening here. I don't have a reference. I don't have skin in the game. And also, I think you said spoilers. Like,
yeah, I did.
You saying spoilers popped up in the chat, so I decided to avoid it entirely.
Nice. Because I told Jonathan like what episode we're doing this week, which was my fault. And he replied with, "This is great. I love it when this, and this happens." I'm like, spoilers! And he thought I was kidding, and he just left the message up there. And I'm like, well, she's probably seen it, but I guess we'll find out. So I'm glad that you're going in completely blind.
Yeah. I have zero understanding. All I know is that the thumbnail shows Picard and LaForge. That's it.
Oh, good. Man, that thumbnail, I keep forgetting that the thumbnails won't worry about spoiling it as well. So yes, Picard and Geordi are in this episode.
There's also appears to be the Enterprise behind them. Spoiler.
Yes, Enterprise is also set in space. That happens.
Mm-hmm. I also see that it's the last one listed for season 6. So does that mean that they went a whole season before doing the second half?
Yeah,
part
100%.
2?
Yeah.
Okay, that's just rude.
Yeah, right. So the cliffhangers back in the day were actual cliffhangers, and you'd have to wait like a whole year to... Well, not a whole year, but you'd have to wait 3 months for it.
You say that, but on a quick scan, in season 6, I'm seeing Chain of Command part 1, part 2, Birthright part 1, part 2, and then we have Descent. Like, they really got a little bit excited about the part 1, part 2 things.
They're two-parter things, and Birthright does not need to be a two-parter. It's really bizarre, because like the B-plot to that, they give up on, and they resolve it in part 1, and then part 2 is all about the A-plot. It's like, well then, at least give it another B-plot or something. But Ronald D. Moore and Rick, it's mainly Ronald D. Moore, really, really liked, and Ira Stephen Bear really liked serialized storytelling, so they liked multiple parts. So like in Enterprise, they would have like 6-part episodes and 4-part episodes, but Gene Roddenberry wasn't really a fan of that serialized stuff. He wanted each episode to be its own contained story, because when they're in syndication and they're on reruns, part 2 doesn't make sense if you just tune in and start watching part 2. But they were like, screw it, people will be fine. And so when Gene passed away, they lent way more into two-parters than they ever had before. So yeah, that's why you see more in season 6 and 7. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. So are you ready to descend into the Descent? The Descent, not the movie The Descent, but Descent, the Star Trek episode.
I suddenly have doubts, but yes.
To the holodeck! Welcome to 10 Forward, the part of the show where we grab a drink from the replicator and share our immediate thoughts and feelings on the episode we just watched together. Most important question first, what would you like from the replicator, Ambassador?
Ooh, Borg juice, please.
Oh! You know it's going to assimilate you from the inside out. Like, it will be don't swallow the seed of the apple because it will grow a tree inside you. That literally happens when you get juiced by the Borg.
All right, listen, now that you're calling it Borg seed, I no longer want it.
I want some Borg seed in me.
God.
Yeah, that's
I guess
gross.
I want the emotional sweat of Data. I don't know. There was nothing in this episode that was liquidy.
You didn't have to be liquidy. It could be anything.
I'm always thinking it's a drink.
That's because I say it's a drink. And I keep forgetting to update my intro. I changed it about 20 episodes ago. But I keep forgetting to update my prep sheet.
Thank you, Captain, for asking me to read your fucking mind.
Yeah, come on. It's been 6 seasons. We should be at that point now.
Well, then I want happy brownies.
Good. There's no brownies in this episode. You need to pick. Anyway, I want Law's black outfit that he has at the end.
To eat?
No, it doesn't have to be edible or drinkable.
What is this show? What is happening right now? This is a staple of the show, is that we have something from the replicator to apparently eat or drink, and now it's anything?
Yeah, there was a time when we just replicated anything because I ran out of drinks. Do you want to go back to drinks? Has that really stressed you out?
No, you do whatever you want, Captain. Whatever you want.
I would like the outfit.
The outfit
that Law wore with the chest plates and whatnot.
Well, that's done then.
Thank you.
That's done.
So this week we are talking, hopefully, about season 6, episode 26 of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Descent Part 1. The Enterprise responds to a distress signal, and a strange ship is in orbit. Upon which, on the planet, they discover a group of Borg who are acting very, very, very strangely and calling themselves and names and such. Upon further investigation, we discover that this Borg ship is roaming throughout the galaxy, and Data is experiencing emotions, but can he experience anything other than anger? The crew pursue the Borg to find them on a planet in a secret structure. What is happening, and why has Commander Data gone rogue? Ambassador, thoughts and feelings on the episode?
Well, I wanted to tell you that I wrote a little introduction too.
Oh, nice. Were you waiting for me to screw up so you could dive in?
No. Yours was fine. I just wanted to
Fine.
Now, I wrote this halfway through, so admittedly it kind of stops.
The best synopsises are the ones that don't know the whole episode.
Doesn't really get to the end at all.
Yet. Yeah.
But I feel like this episode is revisiting a huge moment for Picard and his decision to release Hugh back to the Borg, and the moral choice and its consequences. Tensions are high in the sector of space, with Borg having an ability to make wormholes or something. Meanwhile, Data has experienced an emotion, and the reality of what that emotion may be is possibly the biggest concern of them all, especially if he's trying to find some sort of kink where he likes to be in mortal danger to feel anything.
Sometimes I wish I could live stream my thoughts because, that second from end sentence, I was just thinking, man, this is a really concise plot summary. This is great. And immediately you then said kink. And I was like, for fuck's sake, she was so close.
Hey, he's
so close.
Obviously
he's getting
struggling.
He's going on the holodeck and getting stimulated.
Experiencing some stuff. Overall thoughts and feelings on this one. Okay. I think sometimes I want to think that I'm a unique consumer, but then I watch episodes like this and I realize I'm not.
You just like the action and shit.
I'm just like, why are you fucking with my people? Where's just my happy little episode? Why do we have to have the drama llama come along? Or the Borg or Rorg or whatever word I can't think of that I didn't make up earlier cleverly before we started recording the podcast. But I didn't mind this episode. But it was concerning. This is a serious episode. This episode isn't having fun at all. There's no joy. There's no, and even the techno babble that's happening as they're trying to figure out various things, like the Borg's ability to zip around space or whatever. Even that stuff is hard to get into and get excited about because you're just like, okay, I'm listening to what you're saying and it's very, very important. But we are on a time crunch from pretty much the beginning. And they've even wrapped in false tension into this too. There's a ship that was going to appear at one point in time and Picard gets pissed about it. It's just somebody give them a debrief. Tell them to follow protocol,
so
god damn it.
Somebody send them the ship recognition protocols and tell them to fucking read it. That's so brutal.
He's like, this is serious.
Borged. Yeah.
So even that is false tension because they were like, red alert. So there's so many red alerts and we're going to battle. And then there's away teams being deployed for military activity and splitting up. And there's, reasons that they can't scan planets. And so they're just putting us in a very uncomfortable scenario. And they're fucking with Data.
They are fucking with Data. They really are.
And I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. And that's why I think I am just the boring consumer that wants my little playthings where I like them so that I feel my happy feelings from my brain. This episode did not release happy dopamine into Deneé's Star Trek brain. This one was here is some additional stress for your day.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's okay because we're watching it and there's going to be a resolution next season or whatever.
For sure.
It's not that it's bad. It's interesting. What they're doing is interesting. But it's just what do I like about this one? Deanna Troi, it looks beautiful.
As always.
Beverly looks beautiful. I think Will has a pinch in his neck because he kind of always is leaning to the left just a little bit. So I'm a little concerned maybe he needs.
Interesting.
It just that was a little distracting.
How you're always watching people's posture.
I cannot. Yeah. I can't help it.
What do you think when he does his lean? And you're just this is a bad posture thing. Riker, you should not be leaning on the chair. Because he always does his
I don't mind leaning in when you're sitting, but when you're standing up and your head's constantly cocked up and your shoulders glued to your ear. I notice those things. I also notice when the away team is on the ground and the men are wearing comfortable flat black shoes and the women are wearing high-heeled sort of shoes.
While searching the planet of a forest. Yes, but I will request you hold your sins for ReSINstance.
Fine.
That is a really, really interesting point because I am very aware that TNG is your happy place and it is your kind of relaxing, let's just put Star Trek on, and like relax with my friends and hang out with my people. And I picked a very not friendly episode where it's just like, why is Data being mean? Why does he want to kill Geordi? And
dude,
why
that was
is everyone stressed? Why is Picard being talked down to by an admiral? Why is Picard losing his temper with Riker? Like, everyone is so on edge. It's a big old anxiety episode, and I kind of like that. I love when TNG gets a little bit dark, because I know you can always go back and do the happy episodes, but this one is a dark episode. Like, they took some big swings, both with the Borg and with Data. Without giving you any context for what's going on.
No, and I think that this does a thing that's a little uncomfortable when you're used to. So, like humans, like patterns. It's just part of what we enjoy.
It's why TNG is so successful. It fits a pattern.
We're breaking the pattern by putting the resolution later. And this one's really tense. It's not like it's a will they, won't they tense thing. It's like, I'm sorry, did you just unite Data with Lore to take over the Federation? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, what did I just hear that correctly?
The sons of Sung have joined together.
And also, before we go on, in the category of did I hear that correctly, I was distracted by my chocolate bar for one part of this episode. I had to like really get into the chocolate bar to like get my next piece out or whatever.
Makes sense.
And I was kind of like looking down and I was distracted. Okay. And so my note coming back up into the show, like what I missed, I wrote down this. I'm sorry. I spaced out for a split second. Did Data just say he subjected himself to erotic imagery to see if he could feel other emotions? Like,
yep.
Okay.
That happened. Yep. That happened.
So this episode's not just like pushing the boundaries of taking our beloved characters and putting them on the enemy territory and bringing in the Borg who are evolving and reminding Picard about potentially a massive mistake with Hugh.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also just going to talk about erotic imagery. And I just now have this vision
Data watching porn.
Data just sitting there for however long, just trying to watch porn. And then like in the following scene, I think is when he's checking his kink out in the holodeck. I don't know.
The other interesting thing is that Data is fully functional. So all of his parts work and do what you would expect them to do. So I'm just like, does it get a reaction just out of programming? Like,
yeah.
What if Geordi had walked in on that?
Right? Like maybe he did that in his private quarters, I would assume. Because it was imagery, not like interaction with. It was
still. It
was a very interesting episode.
The browser history is getting corrupted for sure.
Correct.
I think my big question was this one. So in the intro, we talk about somebody on Twitter mentioned that there's an episode before this that you should watch, and that is obviously referencing Borg, which is where we meet Hugh. Now, did you feel super out of the loop, or did the episode do a good job of filling you in, plus your knowledge of Hugh from Picard?
Right. So thanks to us starting off this podcast series with Picard, we got to have those conversations when Hugh appears in that series. And so I remembered those conversations. But then, yes, they drop in some exposition delivered by, was it an admiral?
Admiral Nechayev, yeah.
Yeah, so she comes in and pretty much lays out not only what happened with Hugh. So for those that didn't remember or didn't see that particular episode, they're not completely in the dark, but also really just hit home that Picard, potentially really messed up by not seeing it as an opportunity to ruin the Borg. So that was good. I think the episode did a good job of explaining what's going on. However, had I not had the previous knowledge of Hugh from watching Picard with you, I think there's so much happening in this episode. It might have been one to just take in little chunks. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I kind of pause and then explain, pause and then explain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, let's absorb that scene. Okay, let's absorb that scene.
I knew that you'd watched Picard and we talked about Hugh before and he wouldn't be completely alien to you. That's why I wasn't too worried about having not covered Borg. But super briefly, they find a damaged Borg ship. They rescue Hugh. They decide that this is the first time that they've managed to have a Borg on its own. And Picard demands Geordi creates a program that can be put inside the Borg, which will basically be a computer virus that wipes out the collective. And because the Borg are all one mind, it will spread throughout the entire collective and kill them all. Geordi and Data eventually get to know Hugh and like him, and he turns into an individual. And then Picard meets him and is just like, well, now I feel guilty and I feel emotions, and decides against doing it, but still reintroduces Hugh to. And yeah, Nechayev is all pissed off that he didn't wipe out an entire species, but I will cover that in ReSINstance.
I think like the things that are positive about this episode is, and I thought about this is like a sin maybe, but also not. This reminds me that the Enterprise, even though it's like an exploration ship, is also a battleship.
It's ready to fuck.
And there's lots of people on board, including families, and they've made a decision to be on this ship, even though
flagship.
It
is a strange choice.
Get bad, but that's like their choice. It's not like they were forced to have a family. So
no one was forcing them to have babies.
That's right. That's on the record. So this episode kind of, instead of being like on the exploration side, it's definitely more in the danger side. And even though this is a more serious episode, and I kind of jest, don't fuck with my crew, it is fun to see them in serious mode, because you do have to have the dynamic and the range. And this is the episode that's like, for me, reminding me about that range of seriousness. And there's a lot of serious stuff happening, and I kind of liked seeing them get to act in that range too. It's not all just like weird interactions with alien creatures that they're going to have sex with, like we saw recently, because we watched a lot of TNG while I was on vacation. And I got to see Riker in some very interesting clothing.
Yeah, you did. Hairy nipples everywhere.
Hairy nipples everywhere. I don't mind hairy nipples. It was beautiful to behold. But this is like, oh, we're getting serious now. And there's like this tender kind of moment between Beverly and Picard when she becomes captain. Oh. And they're like, he's like, good luck. And they're sort of smiling to each other in this really, I don't know, it seems meaningful to me.
Just kiss each other goodbye, goddammit. Like, it
never
happens
did,
in
though,
so
right?
many
Like,
scenes.
they never hooked up, right?
I'm not going to say... there's an episode we need to watch.
Oh, no.
It's a really, really good one.
Is it like an official one for the show, or is it like one that we watch on the side because it's not a big deal?
This is one if you're trying to test if you can get stimulated on the holodeck.
Oh, Jesus.
That's the one. Different actors, different title, different production. It looks very, very different. Yes, it's the next XX generation.
The X generation.
Yeah, that's the one.
I didn't mind it. There was certainly some stuff that, whatever. But I think it was good.
I think your opinion is actually pretty representative of the roughly. I'm going to speak on behalf of all Star Trek fans of the Star Trek fan base, roughly in general. It's kind of a bit of a cop-out season cliffhanger because oh great, we're going to bring out the Borg again, and by this point it's gonna. I mean, wait till you get to Voyager, but at this point it's kind of like an easy go-to to end the series. The reason I defend it and like it is because it brings the Borg in with a mission. Like, they're very different. Like, this is...
Yeah, they've evolved or something.
Yeah, this is a very different type of Borg that we're looking at. It's not the usual. And to tie that in with the only other, like, cybernetic organism that we know of that lives, Data, is really, really cool. I love that.
Well,
and then to team that up with lore as well, for me, I'm like, if this episode hadn't happened, I would forever be like, man, wouldn't it be cool if lore teamed up with the Borg? And it gave it to us. Like, we've got it, and we have a whole nother episode to go. It's really, and then just wondering what lore would do with them and stuff. For me, combine that with Data tackling emotions, and I think it just comes at this from a really, really good angle. Yes, it's missing the humor, it's missing the whimsy, the fun, the hopefulness.
Yeah.
But this is very much a region of getting into like Deep Space Nine and a more serious, quote-unquote realistic era of Star Trek where this is what the future would most likely look like. Perhaps not the utopia that we've been seeing a lot of so far. So I kind of applaud it for going a darker region, but I get why it's uncomfortable in the context of TNG.
I completely agree with you, because there's some things that's really interesting, truly, to see. Like, Data's first emotion that he experiences is this sort of triggered anger. My theory, I've got a lot of theories after watching this episode, because it happens when he's trying to protect himself and his crew. So it's either triggered by protection, or maybe something is just weird because he's in proximity to the Borg. We'll see. But like, he has this natural occurrence because he doesn't have the emotion chip. He has a natural occurrence happen, and he's trying to figure out what that looks like. And that is really, really interesting. And for him to explore that he had pleasure in it, or he liked it, that's scary. Terrifying. But he's trying to figure out how to create these synapses, in his programming to explain this thing that he is trying to wrestle with defining him. And don't we do that too? Sometimes we come across something and it's like, man, that felt really, really good, but I hurt somebody. So what is that? Like, it felt good because I defended myself. It felt good because I made a boundary, but I couldn't make everybody happy. And what does that mean? And am I a menace, or am I morally off here? And he's kind of like, we're watching Data go through that. But when he crosses that line where he's like, yeah, I'd totally kill my buddy to feel that again, it's like, okay, it's time for you to go.
Okay. That's the really serious part. When he's like, there's something wrong here. Yes, I would kill Geordie so I could feel again. I'm like, okay, we've strayed from philosophical into what is going on.
Super glad that you're going on the shuttle. Great. But it kind of swung for me in this thing where, like, of course I love Data. And when he was defending against the Borg, which, okay, yes, you're right, the Borg are probably used, but that's more than I remember, because I'm not watching TNG episode to episode all the way through and maybe seeing how densely it's, populated in their series. Like, to me, it's more of a peppering of Borg. And so when they showed up in this episode, I was like, yeah, because they're such a terrifying foe.
Yeah. Like, I mean, in TNG, there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes with the Borg, and 2 of them are 2-parters. So they are very sparingly used in TNG, but it is weird to do them for another cliffhanger. But I get it, because like, they're the coolest enemy that they came up with, and it's a different variant of the Borg problem as well.
Yeah, this isn't like the Borg collective. This is the Borg lore offshoot, potentially with Hugh in there, and it's a mystery, and that's different.
And did they create it? Did Picard create this offshoot of the Borg? It's a great question, and I love, like, I always love when Picard comes back in touch with the Borg, because his shields go up so strong, and he is so serious.
Super big deal.
He immediately taps into this knowledge that is still in his brain and is still there from being assimilated. And he overlaid on top of that is his most recent example to pull from is him showing compassion to the Borg. So he's like, man, these people took everything from me, and I still showed them compassion, and now that's come back to bite me. Like, it's, if anything, I would love more time with Picard wrestling with that. But Picard, TNG is very efficient with its time, and we get the conversation between him and Riker where he snaps at Riker. And did you see, like, Riker's eyes just get so big, like a little puppy that got told off? And Picard's immediately just like, I'm sorry. Like, that apology always gets me, because it's very rare to hear Picard apologize for something, and it kind of just shows that the Borg are his big blind spot. Like, he is out of control when it comes to Borg.
Well, to kind of like tie that together with what I was saying a moment ago too, there's a swing in, so even though it's all in a serious category, but there's like a swing in emotion. Like, he gets really emotional and then he apologizes for it. And with Data, it's like, for me, he swung from being this badass battling the Borg, like he's the MVP. He's fucking them up. Like, and it's
he
like,
is just choking them out.
And then it like tips back over into the okie It's a little, all right. It's not just like, it goes into exploration at the end of the episode where he's talking to the Borg. But even in that moment, you see him going, stop it, stop it, stop it. It's just this really intensity. And as he tries to recreate the intensity, like, that's just not something that we get to see very often, is Data specifically trying to recreate an emotion. That's
especially
a new thing.
Like a pissy one, like a one that he knows is really dangerous, that turns him into like a murder robot.
It feels like this episode does so many big things that you miss the importance of it because it's just going to the next thing so quickly, even though it's a two-parter. Like you said with Picard, exploring that would be really interesting. And then here Data's exploring what he's experiencing. But the problem is still that the Borg are out there and what are they doing? And so we have to stay like on their trail. And then before we know it, Data's in a shuttlecraft and then we got to go find Data. So it doesn't really stop. You don't get to, you very quickly forget that fucking Dr. Hawking opens up this episode.
I get that's the only whimsy that we get, isn't it? I have more to say on that is definitely in ReSINstance, and it is just that this episode puts the concept above the show more than anything. It has story beats that it wants to get through. It has reveals that it's very, very proud of, and it puts that above TNG and above the show itself. It is an episode that feels very odd in the warm TNG blanket, but that opening is an all-timer opening, and Stephen Hawking is on record as saying like that's one of his crowning achievements is being in a Star Trek episode, and it's just brilliant. Like, of course Data would do that. He'd have a poker match with the most intelligent people that are on record, and of course Isaac Newton doesn't want to be there. He's just being pissy. It's so funny. I love that open.
Yeah, the open was fun. It's also fun to to have Dr. Hawking as like a guest. And to think that all of the people that are in that room on that set want to be freaking out that they're in his presence, but they have to act, so they have to get into character.
Right.
So now they're in character.
Yeah, while he's freaking out about being on the holodeck, and he got like a big set tour of the bridge and the whole ship, like he's freaking out as much as anyone else to be there. So just what a lovely overlap of nerddoms. It's so beautiful.
And like when he lays down his cards in like the props department's like, okay, we got to do this thing, and like they make this like
wrong again, Albert. I love that so much. So good.
Yeah, that was that's you're right. That's like so it kicks off that and you're like do.
Oh, whimsical. Yeah, let's go. Fuck
the rest of it's just big like what the fuck.
But I do love how brutal the Borg are in this episode, and like Riker sums it up. It's like fighting the Klingons. And it's one of my favorite lines.
No offense.
But it's Worf's reaction that gets me the most when he's just like, none taken. He may as well be saying, "You damn fucking right, they were Klingons. Yeah, they were brutal. Like, that's my boys. That's how Klingons fight, yeah?"
Yeah. If I have any major concerns about this episode, it's that, like, what they're going to do to resolve it. I think that we can very easily make some assumptions because they gave us, like, the positron network wipeout thing. They already talked about it in this episode. So I think like, okay, they have an option. They've already talked about it, but there's going to be a break. So we'll forget about it before the next one comes, kind of a thing.
An entire 3-month break.
But there's just a lot that I'm like, I hope that they don't just scoot it along really quickly. I hope that they give it.
We are going to do a prediction section, so we'll face your fears and possible predictions at the end of the episode and see. I will try and put on a good poker face and not reveal whether your fears concern me about next week's episode.
Okay.
I'll disappear from the computer for that.
Okay. Yeah, because whenever I mentioned, because I predicted that it was lore during this episode. And you don't have a great poker face, just so you know.
Well, because you call me off. They don't say it. Because you're just like, is law the one? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? However, along with the theme, it kind of... I was almost like wanting to talk about it in the intro. Just because it was maybe perhaps kind of obvious. But then I thought the Borg would kind of throw you off because he's only in like the last couple seconds. But yes, some good deductions. This is the lore arc, which is, it's a good way to bring him back. Is what's Lore been doing for the last 2 years? Been fucking with the Borg.
I do want to say before we get into the ReSINstance part 2 of the part of the show, this one also introduced subspace distortion wormhole creation, right? Is this the first time this has appeared? Because they all seem kind of confused by it, but pretty much we have like creating little wormholes to get around. And I remember you telling me that the Borg have this technology. So is this the first time that we're introduced to it?
Mm-hmm. So this is the introduction of the Borg transwarp conduits. And
transwarp conduits.
This is elaborated way, way more upon in Voyager, because they're sent to the Delta Quadrant, and that's the home of the Borg. So they interact with these conduits a lot more. But this is the origin of how the Borg get around and why their ships are able to move so much faster, why they're able to appear out of nowhere, and how they kind of dominate. So yeah, I don't know whether I'm sure they meant to, but they didn't just, it wasn't just thrown out there and forgotten. Like, people ran with this. The Voyager team ran with it and developed it into kind of the Borg that we know now. And the reason that I think they're definitely mentioned in Picard, because at the end of season 1, that's how they escape the artifact, the Borg ship in Romulan space. And then they get to the final planet, and then the Borg ship comes out of it as well and gets eaten by the plants and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty. This is the origin. I kind of forgot that until I watched the episode.
Yeah, I only assumed that because of the way that the crew was interacting with the data. It wasn't like, oh, this is what they've been doing. It's like they're figuring it out, and then they also enter into one of them themselves. And they end up 16 light years away or something.
Yeah,
or 60
in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Now, the squiffy thing is that, man, they just don't use them ever again. Like, Geordi manages to hack into this one so quickly. Nope, you don't see them do that again, really. Not until, Picard, and very, very rarely in Voyager. And it takes a lot of effort. And Geordi's just, scanning some frequencies. Oh, I found my favorite station. Zoop, let's go. How did you feel when you saw the Borg acting differently? So, because you were just when the first Borg is that he killed Tarsus or whatever it is, and they're referring to themselves by names and and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? It's really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun, because my first assumption about Borg is, the collective. So when they're gathering data, when we first see them, we're on the substation. And they're kind of scanning around, and they're saying there's the Klingon, here's the human, here's the android, and then they scan him and learn his name somehow. And I don't know if that's because of lore. Maybe lore gave them that information or something, but it was kind of confused. I was confused.
Mm-hmm.
But they're building a mystery, and that's a song by Sarah McLachlan.
Yes.
So now I'm singing that in my head.
We'll pause while Tiana, Deneé has a little singing in her head.
Yeah, I'm going to change my name to Deneé Troy. I'm just going to do it.
No, it's going to completely screw me up. Deanna Troy?
Deanna Troy. Deanna Troy.
DNA Troy.
It kind of works. It kind of works.
My goodness, it kind of works. It's amazing.
No, I loved it. I loved that they were different. And because I knew about Hugh, I wrote down in my notes, I think this is a Hugh thing. Yeah. But it was alarming, because one of the things that they said at the very beginning was, you've killed my friend and now I want to make you suffer. I was like, no. You don't usually talk like that. You usually must assimilate, blah, blah, blah. You
don't really care.
Yeah. It turned them into these tactile, very precise and intentional beings that are super powerful.
And with guns on their arms as well now.
Guns, yeah.
Pew pews.
And also, just really interested. The whole scene with Data at the end, where he's talking to this Borg, and the Borg is essentially saying, well, don't you want to have emotion? And then, Data ends up escaping through the shuttle bay and all that stuff and leaving. But they're really highly intelligent, or he is really highly intelligent with the amount of mental fuckery he was doing with Data. So yeah, it was alarming. They're very alarming to me.
So did you like that scene overall with Croesus trying to tap into Data, or was your kind of sin brain going off?
My sin brain was going off. Yeah, my sin brain was going off. It was a little distracting. And I also, again, I don't quite understand the motivation behind this Croesus character. Is the mission to retrieve Data somehow? Because there was something that was said about, isn't it somebody on the bridge said, isn't it interesting that wherever is being attacked, that the Enterprise is the one that responds? So it does seem that there's a trap being set for our Enterprise crew specifically. So if the goal is to retrieve data, maybe that's why this particular Borg is like, I'm going to find a hook and just latch in on it. But I couldn't tell. It was a little confusing. And again, I glanced away for a split second. If like there was just kind of this moment where Data sort of shifts from being very logical into maybe feeling something again. And that's where I'm like, are they fucking with his like
did you
system
notice
somehow? And the music started. And so I was like,
did you notice that the Borg poked his arm and turned something on?
Yeah.
Yes. Cool.
Predictions, people. Well, that's one of the predictions I wrote down is I think that they're doing something. There's something that's happening with that's interfering with his ability to resist some kind of programming or his ability to have, because, Lore has 2 emotion chips in him at this point, right? Or he has his existing programming plus the data chip.
Plus the extra chip.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So he's got all of the emotions.
So something's going on. They fucking with him somehow. And, I think I'll write that down.
For me, like the really conversational Borg drone is so scary to me. Like, because he's so eloquent. He clearly has a mission. And I'm just like, oh, the Borg are dangerous. Like, usually when you get a Borg on their own, they're fine. Like, it's not fine. Like, one drone can do a lot of damage, but you can probably manage it. But when they start talking and start making sense, spooky.
I think that kind of goes through everything.
Yeah, I think that covers it all.
Except for we did get to go down to a planet, and it is kind of fun to see our crew, walk around in nature.
Yeah.
I imagine the moment, they scouted out this hill, and they're like, okay, we're gonna get the filming crew on the top of the hill, so we can see you coming up the hill, and then someone says, action, and then they make these wonderful people just climb up God knows what for a shot while making Deanna Troi do it in heels.
But think about all the people that had to carry the camera work, the cameras and stuff. It's like Bear Grylls. Like, imagine he's doing all of this stuff in
They're
nature.
in tennis shoes.
But my last big thing was just how Brent Spiner is always acting. He's one of the few people that always has to be acting. So what made this spring into my mind is when Data and Geordi are talking about Data's experience with anger and emotions and whatnot. And Geordi is just like sat casually on the edge of the control console. Stop sitting on consoles, by the way. Stop leaning on buttons. But Data is like bolt up, firm, stiff. And that's how he always has to be. He always has to be thinking, how would a robot be standing right now? How would a robot be reacting? And he does his like little head twitches whenever Geordi like makes a point. He's always processing. Brent Spiner doesn't get to switch off. Like he is always physically in character, and I feel like he has a metal chest, but it's not. It's just him. He's rigid. so good.
He is so good. He's so good that after he experiences emotion and he relinquished himself of duty, he's in engineering, hanging out with Geordi. Yeah. Doing some scans and stuff. And there's this moment back and forth between them, which is in my ReSINstance, but I'll get to why in a second. But he stands up as Geordi is talking about what he's talking about. And he's kind of looming in the background. And I know that it's important to be in the shot so the actors are thinking like, get close so that I'm on frame. But because Data is like processing his enjoyment of murder, I was on edge. In that moment, I was like, oh my God. You just
thought like Data was going to snap his neck or something?
Yeah, or something. And then later, he's like, yeah, I'd super kill my friend. And I'm just like, holy shit, it almost happened in engineering. Get
this man away from the people that we love, quick. Yeah. Just again, Data
it's another
is
example of him being a really dangerous thing to have on board.
Yeah, of course he is. I have a couple of little like interesting tidbits. So have you seen the GIF where it's the whole bridge crew on the bridge of the Enterprise, the TNG crew, and they've usually got like party hats on, or they're doing some dance and they're like rocking backwards and forwards, and it's usually set to some music or something like that. That comes from this episode. So when they're in I
don't remember that part.
When they're in the transwarp tunnel at the very end of the episode, you can see like Data doing this aggressive dance backwards and forwards, and that's where this is the episode the GIF comes from. So I'll send you that GIF later, and
oh my god,
you'll be like, this is it, this is the one.
That's amazing.
But it really looks like Data is being like a DJ at a really intense rave, and he's like super duper focused and doing the chair roll.
And I love the guy in the background who's like holding 2 walls. Yeah. At one point too, he's like, "What?" I
don't know which way I'm supposed to be rocking, but
so my
favorite thing is when somebody rocks the wrong way to the rest of the crew. They're like, damn it, Kevin, we got to do that take again.
So there was this day when we were traveling through Europe, and Ian surprised my friend Jen and I and took us to this restaurant where we got to eat inside of a train car.
Yeah, like an old school Victorian Murder on the Orient Express kind of train car.
But you don't, the restaurant doesn't like boast that from the front. So you walk in, it looks like a totally normal restaurant, and then you walk up this little mini flight of stairs, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to the upper floor, and then all of a sudden you turn a corner and you're just in a train car. Yeah. And we're like, what's happening?
It's really cool.
Really, really cool. Wood panels, and it was just like super authentic. Anyway, so Jen and I are like, we're going to pretend to be like rocking back and forth. And so we had to get into this rhythm together where we're just like bouncing and like we're clinking our little things, you know?
I'm just there eating dinner, just like I'm not with these people.
Whatever, you loved it.
Stop pretending you're on a train.
We're like, like ting, and we had to get it right because it was like she was off. So we had to get into the rhythm for a minute. Can you imagine that that's your job? When you go in and act, you're like, and we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, and left. Whoa!
So the set was actually on hydraulics, so it did move about. It did help them assist with that turbulence effect, but they still would have to get the timing right. And it just proves again, Worf should have a chair. That man should not be standing at all times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One other little thing that I liked is that the ship that Admiral Nechayev is going to be commanding is the USS Gorkon. And I only mention it because you would know Gorkon from The Undiscovered Country, which is the episode that we reviewed with Jeremy. Oh. And Gorkon is the Klingon chancellor that gets murdered at the beginning of that and causes the whole shenanigans that happen. And that only came out 2 years before this episode. So it's something I wouldn't have noticed, but only because I'm watching them quite close together, is how quickly TNG was like self-referencing things. So this would have been 80 years apart in Star Trek, but 2 years apart in the real world. So I can imagine people at home be like, yay, the Gorkon! I saw The Undiscovered Country! Yay! And it's just a weird thought that the original series was still making movies while TNG was on the air. Like that must have been so strange at the time.
Yeah, that's really interesting
to have that overlap. But it explains why they keep reusing the sets as well.
I only have a couple other like really random notes. Like the moment when Picard is trying to talk to the Borg, Croesus. And he's like essentially like trying to talk to a computer or something. He's like, I am Locutus of Borg and you will respond to my questions. And I'm just like,
answer me, bitch.
This is someone really angry with a computer right now. Do you know, like, yes. I am your owner. I paid thousands of dollars for you. You will reboot properly.
This is my password. I've put the exclamation mark in. I've put the capitals in. Accept my password.
Yesterday, my alt tab was not working on my computer. And so I'm like, you will reboot properly and you will have an appropriate use of the alt tab feature, which I use absolutely incessantly all day long.
Exactly.
And here's Picard doing the same thing. It's like, I am Locutus of Borg, which it's kind of like, yeah, but not really, you know? It's
not anymore, you know? Just like, I'm not your average drone.
But it's still funny. It's like he's trying to crack some kind of code. Like, maybe if I put in password 000, this will work. So I kind of enjoyed it. That was kind of funny. Yeah.
Oh, man, don't get me started on technology. My remote isn't talking to my Samsung TV, and all of the troubleshooting online says, go to the menu and then fix this thing. I was like, I can't get to the fucking menu because my remote isn't working. Why do you think I'm here?
I just want to make sure that you did the one thing that I know how to do first.
Take the batteries out and put them back in again?
No, new batteries.
I did that. Yeah, I did that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, you know, as part of your crew, I just want to help you, you know?
Good.
Yeah.
Computer, beam everything off the ship. I now just want to live in a technology-less hole for about 5 minutes and then I'll want it all back. with that, let's head over to ReSInstance's Futile. Battle stations, everyone.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
This is the part of the show where we re-engage our sin brains and remind ourselves that no TV shows without sin, even our beloved Star Trek. Go on, Deneé. Hit us with some stuff that I know we covered quite a bit of it in the overall thoughts, but give us some specifics.
I did very good this time.
Oh, she's got more.
Because last episode, I really couldn't control myself, and I just sprinkled the sins in, and I'm sorry.
These lore episodes are getting to you.
I guess. There was this one moment when they beam over to the first substation and they're trying to figure out what happened. This is before we know the Borg are involved. And they're talking about how this station has been attacked and there's no survivors and they don't really know what's going on. And so they beam down and then Riker takes his phaser out. And I would just like to say that maybe that should be out before you go over. So that if there is someone there, you've already got your weapon in your hand.
Oh, for sure.
Just seems dumb to me.
Get to the planet, and then just in general, whenever they say set phasers to stun, I'm always like, well, what the fuck are they on now?
Already,
are they on kill? Is stun not the default? Are they turned off? Like, why would that ever need to be a thing that you say? Yeah, it's always very interesting. No, it's a solid sin. I don't know. Did you feel like one of the lines that Riker says is, this is brutal even for the Ferengi, because they match the power signature to a Ferengi weapon.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean for the Ferengi? They're not known for being brutal, are they? Like,
how should I know? You're asking my opinion, and I appreciate that, but how would I know whether the Ferengi are... Like, the only Ferengi I really know is from Deep Space Nine.
Quark, yeah. I guess I will ask the live Twitch chat, which you can join us live on Twitch.
Nice plug, Captain.
I'll ask the chat
nice plug.
The Ferengi are like, they're ruthless, but maybe I've seen too many of the whimsical DS9 episodes. I never imagined them being brutal. But anyway, that's a very, very, very nitpicky one. That probably wouldn't make it into the episode if we were actually. My actual one is that it's overall, this is my biggest sin with the episode, is that it's follow the story and hit the story beats rather than be an episode of its own, and it focuses on the reveals so much. So then you have to kind of wonder, well, why is this stuff happening? Oh, it's only because we need the reveal. So the Borg ship at the very, very beginning, if the end goal is to do whatever they're going to do with Data, why don't they just attack the fucking Enterprise and beam him over? Like, there's no reason to conceal yourself other than we need a big reveal. So we want to open the door and we want to reveal a Borg and then go to the credits. We don't want this to be a Borg cube in orbit because we want to press the button, open the door and reveal the Borg. We don't want to mention lore in this episode because we want the big reveal at the end. Oh, it's Data. No, it's not. That's not Data. That's lore. And it falls into the trap of the hook, the cliffhanger, the reveal being the thing that we're invested for. And luckily, I love TNG so much that I'll watch this episode and enjoy it regardless. But it is always a little bit annoying when you depend on the hooks to be your big thing that's driving the story. Like, so much mystery can be distracting. Was it distracting for you as well?
I was just trying to follow along. There was a lot of techno babble. I mean, yes, I see your point. I think that, but that was super fun for me. Like, when the doors opened up and it was the Borg, I was like, oh, shit!
Yeah.
Like, that's fun.
It's really, really fun, and I love it, and I wouldn't want them to do it any differently, but it does...
It makes me think... Why are you complaining about it?
Because it makes me think, like, well, why is that ship so different? The only reason it's different is because we want the reveal behind the door. Like, there's no reason that they're in a different sized Borg ship.
Were they in the ship? I thought they were on the...
The Enterprise meets the Borg ship in orbit, but it's all like weird and grey, and it's an odd shape.
I assume that's because it's not actually like a Borg ship. It was like another ship they commandeered, like lore had gotten somehow.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, the only reason they've done that is to hide the identity. The only reason the writers have done that is to hide the identity of the Borg. So the twist, the reveal for me is being when you have to put so much effort into getting to the twist, it's distracting.
I think the sin that we could go for if we were going to really try to exploit something is that they had the quintessential green fire, like when it's like, oh, they're Borg, and then they fire and it's a green like weapon. I'm curious how, I guess they Borged the ship, didn't they? That's probably what they, because
basically
we learned from Picard. I learned a lot watching Picard because of Borg. And if you haven't seen the Borg Queen do the Borg Queen stuff in Picard, then you haven't seen shit. It's so fucking cool.
Fucking good.
So I guess they like
best part of season
maybe
2.
connect into the ship and then like greenify the stuff or whatever. But
They
maybe if it was
everything.
Okay.
Like they assimilate biological aliens and organisms, they do the same with technology.
That makes sense.
Their nanoprobes just reprogram
all right.
everything.
I see your point.
Which is why that Borg shouldn't be anywhere near Data.
God, that's a really complex sin. Like I get what you're saying. Like my next sin was gonna be when Data is like, stop it. It was gonna be like me talking to my dogs. That was
yes.
I was having triggers to be, or even just like me having to talk to my kid, you know, when she's just like,
stop it. Stop copying.
It was a little triggering there.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So I had a silly sin lined up, and you're like, let's talk about the depth of the reveal.
I think it's one of those sins where like, this doesn't stop me enjoying it, but it's pretty obvious you're going to a lot of effort to get your big, oh no, there's a Borg behind the door reveal. And it's one of those annoying sins where we would never want them to stop doing this stuff. But it is a crutch. It is something that we lean on to get something out of the audience.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not being as artistic as I could be, perhaps.
That's okay. But if you had time to write the sin, you'd write it.
Oh, it would be beautiful. Yeah. Of course it would. Yeah, just like I know the words to White and Nerdy by Weird Al Yankovic because
you do.
I don't have to do it right now.
One of the things I would sin is I really find it hard to believe that Data doesn't have the vocabulary to attempt to describe anger.
Yep, this has always bugged me.
It led to a really great scene that I talked about earlier. You know, I didn't mind the back and forth exchange with Geordi kind of doing the human angle of, well, anger is like, you know, this other emotion. And he used emotions to describe
combative
the emotion of anger. Yeah. And I understand that would be difficult to like reach for, but Data has the language of all. And I think that they missed an opportunity to try to give us, the viewer, a deeper look into specifically anger itself. Because it's an interesting emotion to have Data experience very first, you know, anger. And it's a complicated emotion. And so I would have loved for the writers to try to articulate that a little bit more, especially coming out of the mouth of a character who can articulate very well. So I found that kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, because it's a very human perspective on anger, because the Klingons would argue that anger is a positive emotion. And one of my favorite scenes is with Deanna, where she's explaining that there aren't good and bad emotions. It's what you do with them. So if anger leads to righting a wrong or righting an injustice, then anger is a positive thing and it can motivate you. And then it's just torn down when Data says that he experienced another emotion, which was pleasure. And the way that Deanna's face sinks, like he should be disassembled right then. Your robot man just admitted to enjoying killing someone. You
and
need
no
to
one
turn
is
him
there
off.
to hear it.
Turn him off.
Turn him off. Click his little button by his rib.
Immediately. Just detach the head, burn it with fire. Like, he should not be roaming the ship after that admission. Like, Deanna, you fucked up.
Well, and LaForge hears him struggle with the emotion and, like, the pleasure of it. And it's like, you know, there's something going on here. Somebody else should know about it. We should have some kind of a protocol. Let's not leave our glitchy bot with the Borg.
Right. I don't care if there's a force field between you. I don't know. Like, the force field is pretty pointless because it didn't stop that signal in his arm from doing whatever it's going to do, apparently.
Yeah.
And my next sin with that was, once again, Data is able to override everything. And I would sin this from two fronts, because one, he's able to just free the Borg, get a shuttle, fuck off. Like, he overrides, deactivates the transporter beam, stops everything that he needs to do. And also, we don't see it happen. And this comes back to my everything needs to be a twist and a reveal crutch, because we want the dramatic reveal of Worf saying, yeah, the Borg is on the shuttle and Commander Data. And like, yeah, we guessed, we know. So what you sacrificed there was a badass scene of Data escaping the Enterprise with the Borg and like deactivating stuff, knocking people out. You sacrificed that so that we could have the reveal of, oh, Data might be a bad guy. Like, and that's what I'm getting at with the reveals, is that you're sacrificing some stuff to give us a moment that can be fun, but doesn't hold the weight that I think some people think it does.
I think you're right. And that's why I will approve this sin in the script that we're not actually writing.
Nice. What have you got next?
I think I'd have a fun sin in this one because in this episode, as Data is like processing this emotion, he wants to recreate the scene. And so this poor guy has to be choked out by Data multiple times. And it is interesting to see, and I'm sure once you get the actor all put in their prosthetics, it's like, how else can we use this person? They just spent 12 hours in prosthetics or whatever. So, we see the actual moment happen and then Data recreates it in the holodeck. And
it's his poor grunt. It's like, ah! Every time he gets thrown against the wall.
And you got this like, stop it. So just imagine making these actors recreate this moment. But Brent Spiner makes it interesting because you can see the difference in the two. The first one, he was enraged and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And this one, he's back to being like himself. So it's just so well done.
Stop it, throw. It's so
it's
monotonous. How casual that throw is. He doesn't even like look where he's throwing. It's just stop it, discard, and then disappointment that he didn't, which is an emotion, by the way. You are showing disappointment in the fact that you can't be angry because you can't prove emotions.
Or
Stop
confusion,
being disappointed.
Maybe. I don't know.
I love how we turned that into a sin, then a good thing, and then back into a sin. We did well there. That would have been a ding, reverse ding, ding.
Ding, the ding, ding, ding.
My next one is a pretty big one, and it may be argumentative, but like, so Starfleet's okay with genocide now? Nechayev is just like, if you get the opportunity to wipe out a fucking species again, just because we don't like them and they're trying to hurt us, go ahead and do it. Like, you would have to apply the same logic to the Klingons, to the Romulan. Just because they're stronger doesn't mean that you justify genocide. It's still wrong. Like, I don't know how that's okay. And Nechayev is famous for being really combative with Picard. Like, it's one of the few arcs that carries throughout the show, is that they will encounter each other on 3 or 4 different occasions. And Nechayev is always like, I don't fucking like you, Picard. I don't like how you operate. You need to get back in your box and do as you're told. So I love that from like a consistency point of view. But man, is that Starfleet policy now?
Yep, it is.
That doesn't seem right.
Mm-hmm. Another one for me is since we're kind of a moment ago talking about the exchange with the Borg, I think that Beverly says this Borg is just not in great shape. I mean, I can bring them back, but it's not going to be like healthy experience. Picard's like, do it.
Yeah,
then they leave. I mean, they try to interrogate them. They get frustrated, like, whatever, I'm out. They leave. But then this like supposed I'm wounded Borg turns into this like
fully cognizant.
Yeah. And he goes like straight into just like emotional terrorism for our beloved Data. And I just think that that's some bullshit.
Yeah. That revival should have been way riskier than it actually ended up being. But there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, poor old Bev. And also, Beverly just doesn't have a backbone in that moment. Like, we know she can argue, but because the plot needs this conversation to happen, she backs down and is just like, okay, I will potentially kill this creature because Picard is angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I forgot to put this in the good things, but I love how I want to be more like Data sometimes. And it's when Geordi walks into the holodeck and is like, am I interrupting? And Data says yes.
Like, yes, I love that.
The social construct is, oh, no, it's fine. I was wrapping up anyway. He's just like, no, you were interrupting, but it's okay. Continue.
I kind of want that to be like our quote for the end of the show. Like,
yes.
You would say, am I interrupting? I'd be like, yes.
Yes.
And
but it's
yes.
okay. And it's yes from me. Amazing.
Exactly.
So that was a good thing. That wasn't my sin, but I put it on column. This is the first and only time that the holodeck will require 2 senior officers to deactivate the safety protocols because, you know what? It's just too fun to turn them off. In Voyager, it's just any fucko can do it and just turn off the safeties because we need a danger episode. It's a genius idea. Yes, of course it should take 2 officers. Yes, they should be senior officers. It's such a dangerous tool that you're using. You shouldn't be able to just turn it onto kill mode. But, so yes, I'm sinning the rest of Star Trek for not keeping up with what was established in this episode. And I think I would add like 798 sins, one for every episode of Star Trek that wasn't this one.
I don't really have a lot of others. There was like an easy pronoun game sin in here where there's one that's still alive.
Is Hugh the one?
Are you the one?
Calling him the one.
Yeah,
is pronoun gaming.
My name was given to me by the one, and the one that who will destroy you. Like, so we could easily do like the classic CinemaSins like pronoun game sin there.
And like, what the fuck does the Borg or Lore care that his identity is secret? Like, how is that going to affect the plans at all? Why? Like, it's not going to keep Data any separate. He's still going to be like seduced and stuff. It's all pronoun gaming, and that's what I mean by the twists and reveals. So the plot's suffering because you want to get to those reveals.
I would also, I don't know, this one might be one that because of your knowledge you would reject, but there's this moment when they find the shuttle and they're like, okay, we'll proceed at full impulse. And I'm like, but if you really need to get there quickly, why not warp? Like, is it because they were super close or something?
Yeah, exactly. So you can't really warp in, you'll overshoot. So even like a fraction, so the problem, there is a huge, monumental, ginormous, incomprehensible jump in speed from impulse to warp. It's like, even maximum impulse, I think, is something like 0.1% of the speed of light. And then warp is like just this huge jump. So you would be in a different solar system. So that's why impulse is good for like inside solar systems, and then warp is anything interstellar. So yeah, there's no in between.
Gotcha. And that's why we all enjoy having a Trek nerd
if you get
at the helm.
The problem is if you get super, super close to the speed of light but don't touch it, then you get time dilation and stuff. So impulse, that's the safest, that's the fastest they can go without it doing the time dilation stuff, which is why they're such a big...
Cool.
I love science. Something that always made me laugh is the Borg branding. Like, they walk into the Great Hall and suddenly there's fucking flags. And I know some of that is lore, but the Borg now have a symbol and they have flags and shit. And I'm like,
but are they the Borg or are they something different?
PR department?
This is something different. Right?
No, but the problem is that symbol is used by the Borg everywhere. So they have a symbol, they have a brand. Like, the fuck do they care about branding?
I didn't know. I did not know that.
If you Google the Borg symbol, it will it'll be that. It's so funny.
Okay. Wow.
Yes. Borg need brand.
That's it for me.
I can keep going. I got some more. There's no reason for Picard to leave the ship. We're gonna send everybody down to the planet and leave the skeleton crew.
No, you're
who's
not
gonna
wrong.
be in charge? My favorite thing is when Geordi says like who's gonna be in charge of the ship. Picard looks at him as if he hadn't fucking thought of that. He's like, oh yeah, great question. Who's in charge of my ship?
In my head, I was like, Deanna Troi, and then she's like on the away team. Why is the empath going on the away team?
No need for Deanna to be on there.
Sorry, I thought we were going to go battle Borgs. Why is every person that doesn't know how to like?
Yeah, we're looking for one of the very few people whose presence you can't sense, and yet we're sending you. Now the answer will be revealed in part 2 for both those questions, but it is a sin for this episode. Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we get to the end of the episode, they're doing all of the scanning. They're in the main hall. Geordi reveals that there's no light signatures, no energy signatures coming from the lights. And Picard is just like, there's a dampening field. We should leave. You fucking knew that going in. You couldn't scan the inside of the building. You couldn't scan anything, and you walked in. If like there being no like energy signatures is a warning that you should leave, you never should have gone in, or you should have radioed Riker or some shit. We're going into a big fuck off building, maybe we need backup. No, we're just going to send the entire command crew in there minus Riker and just hope we're fine. I do really like this episode. They just have a lot of plot MacGuffins in order to get us to part 2.
I'm not used to seeing you this angry, really captain. It's making me nervous.
Because I know I love it. It's great, and I can put it to one side.
I'm scared.
somebody had a really, really great idea and were determined to make it happen, and they did, but they sacrificed some in mine. And yeah, my very final one was just some of the Borg in the main hall just waiting in the corridor for them to realize they were trapped before they all came out.
Like a surprise birthday party?
En masse. Yeah, it was like, really? Like, how long were you waiting in the corridor? Because you didn't know they were coming. Like, were you there all day? Like, the mechanics and the amount of effort it would have taken to set that up is just way too elaborate and pretty inefficient for robots. But there we go. Mm-hmm. You may think I'm a potato for thinking the way that I think, but that's my thoughts on Descent.
Are you ready to go on to predictions?
Let's do it. To wrap up the episode, let's head to the Captain's Ready Room. Welcome to the Captain's Ready Room, where we will hear our predictions, and we won't be basking in any Q-like glory, but we will give her a solid pat on the back next week if she gets anything right. Danae, hit us some predictions for how you think next week's going to get resolved.
I cheated because I mentioned many of them during the show. Just to succinctly recap, though, there was something about a positronic network mentioned in this episode, like that if they redid some sort of thing with the phaser, that they could like make some sort of powerful weapon to find data, but if they did that, then it would wipe out his network.
Yeah, so this is a scanning field that would activate his power cells, and it would cause a reaction in his power cells that they could detect. The beam would have to be so big and so powerful that it would wipe out his positronic network.
Which I'm assuming they can bring back online?
No, like it would fry it. Like it would burn his circuits. It would burn him out. Yeah. Okay,
well, I don't want to predict that he's going to be killed, so fuck.
There's a reason they didn't do that.
Okay. All right, fine. We'll say no to that one then. Thank you for the clarification, Captain.
Take that one off the list.
I already mentioned that I thought that it was lore and that I was right, so that's great. Good job for me.
Yep, nicely done. Congrats.
I don't really know. I think like, well, and I noticed the Borg, messing with the emotion stuff. So I'm guessing that Data is going to figure out that there is a way for him to feel emotions, and then like this is going to be part of the arc of him trying to decide what kind of emotions he wants to experience, because I do know that he eventually does experience emotions. I think it has to do with the chip, but I can't remember. It's been way too long. So maybe this is that. I am curious how the Borg thing is going to resolve, if they are like part of Hugh, like the Hugh breakoff, because in Picard, the show Picard, there is, he's like kind of part of this group of Borg that have been reclaimed essentially, and they're sort of going through this like becoming individuals, and that's sort of Hugh's life work. So I am curious if they're just going to wipe all these Borg out, or whatever. But the presence of this admiral sort of giving them options is interesting too. So I feel like they're trying to kind of reconnect with a decision that they made to allow Picard's character.
That's interesting.
Like they're wrestling writing wise with that decision that they made, and they're kind of bringing that back to the forefront.
How do we make that okay?
Yeah, so this is kind of maybe going to be doing that a little bit. I'm also, what if they use the positronic thing to wipe out Lore? Ooh, is this the death of Lore? Ooh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, like how he managed to take them like over, or considered, like he obviously hasn't been assimilated by them in a way.
No.
So he has convinced them not to assimilate. I don't know how that works. Maybe he's offered his brother to be assimilated instead of himself. But there is this big thing to take over the Federation. So
surprise.
Which seems very limited, honestly. There are a lot of
little bit small expectations there.
I mean,
you can
for
aim
Borg,
higher.
Yeah. Borg are like everyone, and they're like, just the Federation. So I don't know. I don't really have a ton of like insight in it, but you did mention Deanna Troi is there, so maybe it's because she can help with the Borg breaking away from Lore.
Interesting. Well, I very much look forward to part 2. I think part 2 is better than part 1, and I think part 1 suffers because it's setting up so much for part 2. But it has been a while since I've seen part 2, because I often have the intent of watching 2-parters and then forget to watch the second part. So I remember everything that happens. It's been a while. So, everybody, next week's homework is Descent Part 2, unsurprisingly. But until then, thank you everybody for listening. I'm going to subject myself to some erotic imagery in the holodeck.
And I'm going to remind you that if it's unethical, you are a very unethical person.
And live long and Podsper.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
We will be communicating exclusively in dinosaur noises today.
It was season 6, right? Like episode...
Did we watch the right episode?
I'm just making sure. Season 6, episode...
26.
And it was called Descent?
I could talk about time dilation and shit like that before. Oh, it's my dream. If I was a smarter man, I would go back to uni and I would actually have some like credentials to back up this and do like a degree in physics or astronomy or something.
Not like actual just Star Trek technobabble.
I'll do. No, that I'm fine. I'm fine with. I mean to back it up with actual science. Yeah.
Actual science. Okay. Well, you could do a podcast on your personal mission to take one piece of technobabble and try to dissect it, and that's the podcast.
My goodness,
as you trying to understand it.
15-minute podcast each week and trying to explain Star Trek technobabble and how it's inconsistent. Yeah,
I like how you made it 15 minutes so that you could actually potentially do it.
Yeah, I know it can't be another hour podcast. I can't. This one's already too long. We don't have time, Captain.
Borg. Oh shit.
Oh shit.
Get him, Data.
Get him! Fuck him up!
No! Get him, Data. Kill him, Data. Kill him, Data. Oh, he's going extra. Why is it shaped not like a Borg ship? Where did it just go? Is the one lore?
I sometimes wish we could just live broadcast Deneé's reactions to some of the moments. Because I know the moments are coming. I'm like, and 3, 2, 1. What the fuck? What was that about? What happened there? What's Data doing?
Yeah. All right, chat. What was Ian chanting? Yeah. You tell me. Sarah Superior has the first guess that you were doing Mr. Boombastic by Shaggy.
Mr. Lover.
Oh, God.
No. Mute him now.
He was singing that part in White and Nerdy by Weird Al. The only question I ever thought was hard. Do I like Kirk or do I like Picard?
The only question I ever thought was hard was, do I like Kirk or do I like Picard? Spend every weekend at the Renaissance Fair, got my name on my underwear. I do know way too many words to White and Nerdy. I do.
Do you know all the words to White and Nerdy?
I can probably, yeah. I think I can get through the whole song. Yeah, I think I could. I'm not going to, but I could. In fact, if I'm not going to, I absolutely could. Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt. I could do it right now.
Since I'm not actually going to do that.
I'm not actually going to do it.
Yeah. What were you singing?
Oh, it was my muted song. I'm on mute. Mute. I just made it up. I'm a genius. It happened. Weird Al, call me. Okay. Let's collab. Yeah. I'm muted.
I think maybe making somebody in the staff sing is actually kind of funny as a point redemption.
I'll do weird. I'll do White and Nerdy. Yeah, I can do that.
Well, like a lot of us like to sing, so we'll see. Point redemption idea.
Various degrees of success. I'm better at the rapping because it doesn't require like harmonies or the actual ability to hold a melody.
Here's one from Link. How come there aren't any more androids like Data?
Basically, nobody knows how. Like Dr. Sung died before, or disappeared and died before he could communicate how he made it. There's a really great episode where Starfleet wants to take apart Data to try and build more of him, and it's basically ruled that they can't because he's a person and he's an individual, and if he doesn't want to be taken apart, then he isn't going to be taken apart. So it's just too hard, and they don't know how to do it. That's the bottom line. Deneé, Nick Jagged says, Deneé, did you like the prosthetics of Albert Einstein better or worse than Dr. Sung?
Better.
better.
I mean, he had a really pronounced noggin.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell that it's just like, we're going to let you know that this person's smart by making
super brainy.
Making their frontal lobe like larger. You know, I thought it looked really good personally. Because I didn't see two lips, that would have been too much.
You did spot, and I helped you spot, Worf's double nose that we talked about last week.
It's not really a double nose.
You can see his nose and then the Klingon nose.
But it's purposeful. It's designed that it has a ridge, and then it's using the original anatomy of the actor as part of the facial structure. Yeah. And I think that's brilliant. That's not a double nose.
I totally agree. It's just
Dr. Soong's lip was different. It was like they had a prosthetic.
Get old.
That is not age. That is two lips than a prosthetic. I watch way too much Face Off.
Oh, Sarah again. Following up on Jagged, which is the best two-parter of all the two-parters? I like Time's Arrow. I love Time's Arrow. That is an awesome example of some bootstrap paradox time travel going on, which I really, really love. I don't know. It's hard. It's best of both worlds. It is. That cliffhanger is so fucking good. Shelby is so good. The technobabble is so good. Locutus of Borg is so good. The Enterprise remains concealed in the dust cloud is so good. Wolf 359 is so good. I love it. Yes, part 2 is weaker, but it's still an excellent two-parter. It's so good. I freaking love it. Apart from, the very last episode, All Good Things, that's been mentioned as well by the chat. It is good. I don't technically count it as a two-parter. I know it is, but it's one big episode that just continues. It's a 90-minute episode, but I like it. It's a good Star Trek movie, really, rather than an episode. We have a bit of shade from Josh Zero. What? The Borg showed up and also Data did a datory thing to save the day? How original! I'm going to go watch Final Frontier. And again, ways to get yourself booted from the chat. It's
Josh tries to get booted all the time, though.
He really does. And he's fortunate that I'm such a restrained individual.
Jagged adds, I wish they didn't cut the scene where the bridge crew start running around screaming, "It's happening again!" as Data once again goes rogue. I am with you on that.
Doing the thing.
We have so many things that have happened with Data that are alarming recently, so I think that this would have been an appropriate reaction.
Nick says Geordi walks in on Data, in quotation marks, choking the Borg, and asks, am I interrupting? The dude should knock. Yes, choking the Borg is now my new euphemism for private time, and you should always knock on another individual's holodeck programs. Stop walking in on them, or you're going to see a Riker boner. Just seems common courtesy.
I really enjoyed this comment from It Don't Connect during the show, who said, I have to keep taking out my earbuds to chat with my boss, and watching Ian and Deneé gesture without hearing what they're saying is very entertaining.
We are here to help.
Jagged asks, here's a question mostly for Ian. Is this the weakest of all the TNG two-parters? I really enjoyed the others more.
I wouldn't call any of them weak, but the question is weakest. No, Birthright is definitely the weakest. Because like I said, it didn't have enough to be an A plot for both episodes, so it needed a B plot for the first episode and then nothing for the second. And I'm not a huge fan of the Klingon episodes are really, really great for building the lore, etc., but they're not my favorite. And Birthright is one that seems super profound, but doesn't actually have any lasting consequences either. So it's an interesting one. But for me, that would be the weakest, which kills me because I love Worf.
Here's a sin from Jagged. Deanna on the planet. You better come take a look at this cliche. And I think it's a meeting hall, she says, as they walk into the very obvious meeting hall.
Yeah. Little Miss Exposition.
That was a rough one, quite honestly.
Oh, this was a good one from R1MA, which I think is Rima 78. Weren't the Ferengi supposed to be the Klingons of TNG? And It Don't Connect replies with, from my vast knowledge and understanding of Star Trek, I recall that Ferengi are a group of individuals who do things in certain ways and sometimes also don't do things. Which is a great way of saying they're whatever the plot needs to be, which is very, very true. They're the butt of the joke until they're actually intimidating, and then they have too much power, and then they're undermined because they're so easily outwitted. But yeah, the Ferengi appear very early on in season 1 of TNG, and they were meant to be the big bad, but they're ridiculous. Like, even in their first episode, they're kind of a little bit scrawny and strange, and then the Borg and the Romulans took over and were way more original. And no, the Ferengi were original, but the Borg and the Romulans are way more intimidating. So the Ferengi quickly became kind of the butt of the joke. And Quark is actually in that episode, but playing a different Ferengi. It's Armin Shimmerman, the guy that plays Quark. He's in that episode, but yeah, playing another one entirely. So he's really credited with defining the Ferengi as we know them. Link says, which ship would win, the Sinterprise or the Derperprise?
I'm going to say the Derperprise, 100%.
No, unless it's out of pure sympathy. I'm not even going to bother to raise shields, and then the Derperprise just...
It's going to derp its way to number 1.
Derp its way to success.
That's right.
I think that would happen.
Okay,
Evasive maneuvers!
Here is a question, actually, from Sarah, who asks, what species is the cutest? I think the Denobulans are so cute.
Oh, it's Dr. Phlox. I love the Denobulans so much. To answer the question, whatever Murph is from Prodigy, which is this like goopy creature, and we do know his species. I cannot remember the name of his species, but we have been told. But he's just freaking adorable. Either that or the Exocomps. The Exocomps are adorable. So that's Peanut Hamper that we saw in Lower
they
Deck.
are so cute.
The Exocomps are so... Peanut Hamper's a dick, but the regular Exocomps are adorable.
Melanoid slime worm?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cute. Although
Murphy's
I've never seen that series. Yeah, I'll just have to piggyback on Ian. Although I think the Klingons are adorable in their own way.
Yeah. Spiky but adorable.
Last question. If you could have any 2 Star Trek characters interact with each other, who would you like to see on screen together?
Man, it would be... Janeway? Janeway and Captain Pike. I want those 2 captains because I actually think they're very similar styles of captain. They're very nurturing, they're very approachable, they're very fun. They're also very moral. I would love to see them team up and just respect the hell out of each other. Like, my team-ups, I hate when it's conflict. It's like, there always has to be this stereotype that there's immediate conflict between them. I want to see them team up and just be best buds.
I think for the sake of the scene, I want Boimler to be involved because he's such a fan, of like everything to do with the Federation. So no matter who you pair him with, there's going to be this fun representation of the fan in that scene. So then I think it'd be fun to pair him up with like Worf or something where it's like a serious character.
Worf would murder him.
But he wouldn't.
So
he wouldn't
quick.
Actually. He'd want to.
Yeah.
But like,
no, you're right.
It'd be like Boimler trying to learn as much as he could and maybe like move up in the ranks and then it would be, Worf having to endure it all. That would be kind of a fun one maybe to do something kind of like that. Or you could go like comedy route. I'd love to do like comedy route. Quark paired with some people would be kind of interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
You know who we really haven't seen since the first season of Picard is Data's daughter, right? Like, bring her back.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm curious about that whole arc. Like, where are we going with this character? So I'd like to kind of check in with that character just as a fan.
Well, she's done now, isn't she? Because Wesley picked her up.
Right?
Wesley the Traveler collected her and they all disappeared.
Let's do that. Let's do like the Traveler character and like a Traveler character to kind of like see into that whole universe and then pair them up with something that really grounds them into humanity so that we can relate to godlike people. So,
yeah, I would love that because the Travelers, I think it's implied they can travel through time as well. So you could have a time travel through the history of Star Trek.
If you've got a Traveler.
Will Wheaton.
Yeah.
And Daj or Soji, whoever it was. Yeah, that would be really, really fun.
Before we start the stove.
Let's start the stove. Shotting
that does not sound
everywhere. Yeah.
That sounds painful.
Let's stow the shards, actually, before we do anything else.